AITA for refusing to let my brother walk my daughter down the aisle instead of her stepdad. I, 45F, have a daughter, Emily, 22F, who's getting married this summer. She's my only child, and I've raised her since she was born. Her biological father, Dave, 47M, is my ex-husband, and her stepdad, Mark, 46M, has been in her life since she was 8. Dave and I split up when Emily was around 3 years old. At the time, Dave was dealing with a lot: partying, cheating, getting arrested for dumb stuff like bar fights, and unpaid DUIs. He lost custody because of all that and only had supervised visitation until Emily turned 10. Even then, he wasn't consistent. He'd show up randomly, sometimes disappear for months, and then reappear with gifts and promises. Mark came into our lives when Emily was 8, and by the time she was 11, he had legally adopted her. He was stable, kind, patient, and present. He helped with homework, went to school plays, took her to soccer practice, and stayed up with her when she had the flu. He's the one who taught her how to drive and took her to her first college tour. Emily even calls him Dad. She hasn't cut Dave out of her life completely, but their relationship is strained. He's cleaned up his act somewhat in the past few years. No arrests. He has a stable job now, but they're not close. Now to the issue. About 3 months ago, Emily came to me and said she wanted Mark to walk her down the aisle. We both got emotional, and she said it was an easy decision because he's been her real dad for most of her life. We told Mark together, and he got choked up, told her it was the greatest honor of his life. It was a really beautiful moment. I thought that was that. But about 3 weeks ago, Dave called me out of the blue and started screaming at me over the phone. Apparently, Emily had told him she wanted Mark to walk her down the aisle, and he took it as a personal attack. He said I poisoned her against him, that I manipulated her, and that I was trying to erase him from her life. I told him flat out that I hadn't influenced her at all. She made her decision as an adult based on her experiences, and if he had issues with it, he should talk to her, not me. Well, he did talk to her, and apparently it didn't go well. He told her that she was ungrateful, that Mark was just the replacement guy, and that she owed it to him to at least honor the fact that he was her biological father. Emily came over in tears the next day. She said she regretted even telling him because she thought he might have finally matured. I tried to comfort her, but I was furious. I texted Dave and told him he had no right to guilt her, that if he couldn't handle her boundaries, then he didn't need to come to the wedding at all. Now my family is split. My parents are siding with me and Emily. They were always disappointed in Dave and never approved of how he handled fatherhood. But my brother, Sam, 43M, is backing Dave. He says that no matter what Dave did or didn't do, he's still Emily's real dad and should have the right to be part of this huge moment in her life. Sam said I should convince Emily to let Dave at least share the walk down the aisle. I said no. I wasn't going to undermine her decision just to make a grown man feel better about his past failures. Sam got pissed and told me I was being petty and vindictive. This escalated over the past week. Sam sent me a long email accusing me of holding a grudge against Dave all these years and using Emily as a pawn. He said I was weaponizing fatherhood and punishing Dave by denying him the chance to walk her down the aisle. He said that if I had any decency, I'd talk to Emily and help her see reason. I haven't shown Emily the email because I don't want to stress her out more, but I'm starting to wonder if I really am too involved in this. I didn't make the decision, Emily did. But I also haven't tried to convince her to include Dave, even though I know it would stop a lot of this family drama. Last weekend, we had a family dinner at my parents' house. Emily wasn't there, but Sam was. At one point, he stood up and gave his whole speech about family and forgiveness and how it's never too late to be a dad. I bit my tongue, but then he said something like some people in this room need to let go of their bitterness and think of the bigger picture. That's when I snapped and told him he could shove his bigger picture. I told him he had no idea what it was like to be a single mother dealing with Dave's crap for years, and that it wasn't his place to decide what kind of father Dave had been. He left angry, and now he's not talking to me. Mark, for what it's worth, has been incredibly humble about it. He told Emily that if she changed her mind or wanted to include Dave in any way, he'd step aside or share the moment. But she's adamant. She says Mark is her dad, and that's final. Now, between Sam icing me out, Dave calling and texting nonstop, and some extended relative chiming in with well-meaning suggestions, I'm starting to second-guess myself. I haven't told Emily she should change her mind, but should I? Should I at least try to help them compromise? Or is it fair to just support her decision, no matter how much it upsets others? So, AITA for refusing to pressure my daughter into letting her biological father walk her down the aisle? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for refusing to let my brother-in-law and his kids move into my house after my sister passed away. So this has been a really messy and emotional situation, and now the whole family is basically split down the middle over it. I'm 38M, married to my wife Lauren, 36F, and we have 2 daughters, 9 and 6. We live in a nice, modest 4-bedroom home in the suburbs. It's not massive, but it's more than enough for our family, and we've worked really hard to get here. My sister Molly passed away in January. She was only 40 and died very suddenly from a brain aneurysm. It completely shattered our family. She was bright, funny, and deeply loved by all of us. She left behind her husband Dan, 41M, and their 3 kids, ages 12, 10, and 7. They live about 2 hours away from us. Dan and I have never been close. I've always found him kind of lazy. He couldn't keep a job for more than a year or 2, always had an excuse, and Molly was the one who really held things together financially. She was a teacher and took on tutoring jobs on the side to help pay bills while Dan bounced around doing freelance gigs or working part-time. It frustrated me, but Molly always defended him and said he was a great dad. Maybe he was, I don't know. But now that she's gone, everything's gone to hell. Dan called me about 3 weeks after Molly's funeral and basically said he was drowning. Couldn't afford rent, couldn't keep up with the kids' schedules, didn't have family nearby, and asked if he and the kids could come stay with us for a while to get back on their feet. I hesitated and asked what a while meant. He said probably 6 months, maybe longer, just until he could sort things out. I asked about his family. His parents are alive, and I know he has a brother who lives an hour away. He claimed they couldn't take him in for various reasons. His parents are elderly, and his brother's house is too small. I told him I needed to talk to Lauren first. Lauren was very sympathetic to the kids, but also firm. She said she wasn't comfortable having 4 extra people, 3 being kids, move into our house indefinitely. Our daughters would have to share a room, and we'd lose our guest room/office. She works from home part-time and needs a quiet space. I agreed with her. It would massively disrupt our lives. I called Dan back and told him we couldn't accommodate them. I offered to help him financially for a couple of months so he could get a cheaper apartment or move in with his brother, and I even offered to help him look for jobs. But I said moving in with us wasn't an option. He lost it, said Molly would be ashamed of me. That family is supposed to help family. That I was abandoning her kids after she'd always been there for me. Which is true. Molly was like a second mom to me growing up. He said I could easily suck it up for a few months and that I was just being selfish. Since then, things have spiraled. My mom is furious with me and says I'm turning my back on my sister's children. My dad is more neutral, but clearly disappointed. My other siblings are split. One of my brothers agrees with me, while my younger sister thinks I'm being heartless. Dan keeps texting me passive-aggressive messages like, "Thanks for stepping up when we needed you most," and "Guess I'll just tell the kids Uncle Ryan didn't want them." I've tried to help in other ways. I've sent over gift cards, helped with some job applications for Dan, and even paid for a week of day camp for the kids to give him a break. But I won't budge on the housing. Now, here's where maybe I am the ****. Lauren and I have a rental property we inherited from her parents. It's a small 2-bedroom house about 30 minutes from us. It's currently rented out to a long-term tenant. When Dan found out, he flipped, said I was heartless for not kicking the tenant out and letting him and the kids stay there instead. I told him that wouldn't be legal or ethical. We have a lease agreement, and the tenant has been there for over 2 years, always pays on time, and relies on the stability. Dan said, "I'd rather see you do right by your own flesh and blood than some stranger." I told him I wasn't going to throw someone out on the street and potentially get sued just to avoid his judgment. Now my mom says I'm choosing money over family, and my phone has basically been blowing up with relatives try to guilt trip me. But here's the thing, I do feel awful for the kids. None of this is their fault. I've made it clear I want to stay involved in their lives. We've had them over for weekend visits and offered to take them for a week in the summer. But Dan is angry that I'm not offering a real solution. Lauren has been supportive, but this has put a real strain on us too. She's getting anxious about the whole thing, and now our kids are picking up on the tension. My oldest asked me why we aren't helping cousin Emma and her brothers, and I didn't even know how to answer her without sounding cruel or defensive. So yeah, I'm torn. I could let them move in and upend our whole lives, and maybe that's what Molly would have wanted. But I also feel like Dan is using her death to guilt me into taking responsibility for his lack of planning or effort. And 6 months could turn into a year or more. I don't trust him to follow through or move out when he says he will. So, Reddit, AITA for not letting my late sister's husband and kids move in with me, even though they have nowhere else to go. AITA for banning my sister-in-law from our house after what she did at my daughter's birthday party. I, 34F, have been married to my husband Jake, 36M, for 9 years. We have a 7-year-old daughter, Ella, who just had her birthday party 2 weeks ago. Jake has a younger sister, Tessa, 28F, who has always had a very, let's say, complicated relationship with me. She's never outright rude, but there's always this undertone of superiority and judgment in everything she says to me, especially regarding how I raise Ella. Some backstory. Tessa is child-free, which is fine. She makes it very known, loudly and often, which again is her right. But she also makes it a point to criticize how people parent their children and claim she knows better because she sees things objectively. She's a therapist, and I do respect that, but I find it really off-putting that she uses her job to justify being condescending about every little parenting decision Jake and I make. Ella is a bright, energetic kid with a lot of sensitivity. She's imaginative, creative, and very into fantasy stories. Dragons, fairies, unicorns, all of it. For her birthday this year, she wanted a Magic Kingdom themed party. We rented a small local community space, decorated it with fantasy-themed decor, and even hired a performer to play a fairy queen. Ella was over the moon about it. She wore a sparkly princess dress and a crown, and she was so proud to show everyone around. Now, on to the incident. The party was going great. About 20 kids came with their parents. Everyone was eating cupcakes and playing games. Then Tessa arrived. She wasn't late, but she came in right when the performer was starting a short story session with the kids, dressed as the fairy queen. Tessa took one look around and gave me this little smirk I know all too well. I tried to ignore it, but then during the story, Tessa walked over to the circle of kids and said, in front of everyone, "You all know this isn't real, right? There are no real fairies. This is just a lady in a costume pretending. Magic isn't real." The kids looked stunned. A few laughed awkwardly. One kid actually said, "My mom says fairies are real," and Tessa said, "Well, your mom lied. There's no such thing. Adults just make stuff up so kids won't be scared or bored." Ella looked horrified. She didn't cry immediately. She just looked confused and betrayed. I rushed over, took Tessa aside, and whispered, "What the hell are you doing?" And she just shrugged and said, "Someone has to tell them the truth eventually. Why fill their heads with nonsense?" I told her that wasn't her place, that this was a party, and that she needed to go. She said I was overreacting and being emotional. I said I didn't care. She was making my daughter's birthday about her own issues, and she needed to leave right then. She left, clearly pissed, but didn't make a scene. After the party, Ella didn't say much about it, but I could tell she was confused and hurt. That night she asked me if the fairy queen was fake and if magic wasn't real. I told her stories are real in their own way, and that just because someone doesn't believe in something doesn't mean it isn't special or meaningful. She seemed reassured, but the whole thing just broke my heart. After the party, I told Jake I didn't want Tessa in our house anymore. Not for holidays, not for dinners, nothing. I was tired of her acting like she was the smartest person in the room and ruining things that mattered to us. Jake wasn't thrilled, but he agreed that what she did was inappropriate. He said he'd talk to her. Tessa later texted me, saying I was being ridiculous and setting a terrible example for Ella by banning people over honesty. She said I was shielding her from reality and teaching her to be fragile. She said if I wanted Ella to grow up resilient, I should let her face the truth instead of fairy tales. I didn't respond, and I haven't spoken to her since. Now my in-laws are involved. Jake's mom called me and said that while she agrees what Tessa did was blunt, she thinks banning her from our house is cruel and escalating things unnecessarily. She said it's not like Tessa yelled or cursed or damaged anything. She just stated a fact, and I'm being overly sensitive. She asked me to reconsider for the sake of family unity. But I don't think I can. This wasn't just an offhand comment. It was calculated, it was done in front of children, and it was specifically targeted at my daughter on her birthday. Who does that? Jake says he supports me, but he also doesn't want to be the middleman forever. He asked me if maybe, eventually, we could have her over for a dinner or something small, just to test the waters. I said I'd think about it, but honestly, I'm still furious. Tessa hasn't apologized, and based on her texts, I don't think she ever will. She's framing it as me versus reality, and painting me as some emotionally unstable mom who wants to keep her daughter in a fantasy bubble. I think she's the one with control issues, and I've just finally set a boundary she doesn't like. Still, the pressure from the family is getting intense, and now I'm wondering if I really did overreact. I mean, she didn't scream or throw things, and maybe some people would say it's not a big deal, but it felt like a violation. A deliberate attempt to ruin something joyful because she didn't personally value it. So, Reddit, AITA for banning my sister-in-law from our house after she destroyed the magic of my daughter's birthday. AITA for telling my wife she's not a free spirit. She's just irresponsible. So I, 36M, have been married to my wife, Kara, 34F, for 7 years. We've been together for nearly a decade. When I first met her, I was completely drawn to her energy. She was vibrant, impulsive, spontaneous, always up for an adventure. She traveled light, said yes to everything, didn't worry about consequences. I was the opposite, organized, methodical, financially cautious. I'm an accountant. She was a freelance artist, doing murals, commissions, even busking occasionally. Back then, our differences were magnetic. She made life exciting. I made it stable. She called us the perfect storm. But after nearly 10 years, what used to be cute chaos has turned into me feeling like a single parent to a grown woman. Kara hasn't held a consistent job for more than 6 months since we got married. She jumps between ideas. 1 month, she wants to start an Etsy shop. The next, she's trying to get into photography. Then she wants to open a cafe with her friend with no capital, plan, or business sense. She'll get excited, pour everything into it for a few weeks, and then abandon it when the reality of hard work and discipline sets in. Meanwhile, I've been shouldering 90% of our financial burden. We agreed early on that we'd be a dual-income household and that she would contribute at least something, but that's never really materialized. I've never been controlling about money, but I've had to cover the rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance, and basically every adult expense while she finds her purpose. At one point, I even set up a separate savings account to help her launch a project, $5,000 that she blew through in 3 months on supplies for a boutique clothing line she never launched. Things came to a head last month when I found out she had maxed out our shared credit card buying materials for a workshop she wanted to run, painting and meditation, $2,800 worth. She didn't ask me. She said it was an investment in her soul. I was furious, not just about the money, but the sheer disregard for how hard I work to keep us afloat. We had a long argument, the worst one yet. She cried, said I didn't understand her, that she couldn't be caged, that her spirit was suffocating under the weight of capitalist expectations. I said, "You're not a free spirit, Kara. You're just irresponsible." The room went dead quiet. She left the house for 2 days, stayed with a friend. When she came back, she barely spoke to me. She's been cold ever since, telling me she doesn't feel safe sharing her dreams with me anymore. I asked if she felt bad about the credit card, and she just said, "Not everything has to make sense to you." I've been thinking maybe I was too harsh. I knew who she was when I married her. I know creativity isn't linear and that she doesn't thrive in conventional jobs. I didn't mean to crush her spirit, but I'm so burned out. I feel like I'm constantly fixing the holes she tears in our life with every new phase she chases. My friends say I should be more patient, that creative people don't fit into boxes, and that maybe she just needs more support. But my brother, who is way more blunt, said, "You didn't marry a free spirit. You married a child." And that kind of hit hard. I do love her. I really do. But I'm exhausted from being the only adult in this relationship. I never wanted to clip her wings, but I also didn't sign up to live paycheck to paycheck while she tries on different identities every few months. Was I the asshole for saying what I said? Let me give a bit more context for how things typically go with Kara. A few years ago, she got really into herbalism. She took an online course, bought over $1,200 in dried flowers, jars, a dehydrator, glass bottles, labels, etc. She spent weeks making teas, tinctures, salves, and lotions. I thought it was cool at first, encouraged her, even helped her build a website. But she lost interest after a month when sales didn't explode right away. Half of the stock expired, and we had to throw it away. Then she wanted to become a travel blogger. She convinced me to take a 2-week trip through the Southwest, which I paid for, under the promise that it would be content. She took a bunch of pictures, wrote maybe 3 blog posts, then never touched the site again. A year later, she started talking about converting a van to live on the road. We don't even own a van. She made a Pinterest board, joined Facebook groups, and that idea fizzled out too. I'm not exaggerating when I say this has happened at least a dozen times over the past 5 years. I'm always the one left cleaning up the financial and emotional mess. She paints occasionally, and she's genuinely talented. I've told her she should stick with that, build a brand, show her work locally, offer commissions. But she says that takes the fun out of it, that she doesn't want her art to become a job. Meanwhile, she keeps calling herself an entrepreneur, but doesn't actually run anything. I've tried therapy. I suggested couples therapy, and she agreed. Once, we went to a session where she spent the whole hour talking about how the world just isn't built for people like her. The therapist tried to steer the conversation toward partnership dynamics, but Kara kept going on about how she needs freedom, not structure. Afterward, she said the therapist didn't get it and refused to go again. So when she maxed out that credit card again, it wasn't just the money. It was the pattern. I'd had enough. I wasn't trying to be cruel, but I needed her to hear how I felt. Not coddled, not sugar-coated. And now I feel like she's retreated further into this bubble of delusion where anyone who questions her is oppressing her. A friend of hers messaged me after Kara stayed at her place. She said Kara was heartbroken, that I shamed her for being herself, and that she's scared I'm trying to turn her into someone she's not. I told her that's not it. I just want a partner I can rely on, not someone who views basic adulthood as an existential crisis. So I don't know. Was I too hard on her? Am I just trying to force her into a mold that doesn't fit her? Or is this what happens when one person in a relationship decides they don't want to grow up? AITA? AITA for telling my brother's fiancée that she wasn't part of the family yet and shouldn't expect to be treated like she is? This all happened over the past few months and culminated during a family vacation that turned into a disaster. So I'm trying to get an outside perspective before I reach out to my brother again. 28F, come from a very close-knit family. I have 2 brothers, Chris, 30M, and Jeremy, 26M. We've always done holidays, birthdays, and even vacations together with our parents. It's been a tradition since we were kids, and we've managed to keep it going into adulthood, which I think is pretty rare and special. Chris has been dating his fiancée, Tessa, 29F, for about a year and a half. They got engaged 6 months ago, and while she's nice enough on the surface, I've always felt like she's been trying a little too hard to insert herself into the family dynamic. I get that she wants to feel included, but some of the ways she goes about it come off as pushy or overstepping, at least to me. For example, She started referring to my parents as mom and dad, even though she hasn't had a real sit-down with them about that. My mom was a little uncomfortable about it and told me she thought it was too soon, but didn't want to make a big deal. Tessa also tries to take over the planning of our family gatherings, even though we've always split that among the siblings. She came into our family group chat, which Chris added her to, and started changing the Thanksgiving menu last year. It rubbed all of us the wrong way, including Jeremy, who is usually the most go-with-the-flow guy I know. Anyway, the issue came to a head recently. Every summer, my family rents a lake house for a week in July. We've done this since we were teenagers. It's always just been immediate family, no significant others, not even serious ones. The idea is that it's our chance to reconnect as siblings and with our parents, and the rule has always been clear. My younger brother has been dating his girlfriend for 3 years, and even she's never come. My own fiancé wasn't invited until we officially got married last year. It's not personal, it's just the one time a year that's reserved for us. This year, Tessa assumed she was coming. Chris never told her otherwise, and none of us realized he hadn't told her the family rule. She was talking in the group chat about what kind of food she wanted us to buy, asked about sleeping arrangements, and started planning fun games for everyone to play. When I asked her, privately, what she was talking about, she said, "The lake trip? I've been looking forward to it for months." I gently told her that it's actually a family-only tradition and that none of the significant others have ever come. I try to be kind about it, saying that it's nothing against her. It's just how it's always been. She went quiet, and then later that night, Chris called me furious. Apparently, Tessa had cried after our conversation, saying I told her she wasn't family. Chris accused me of being jealous or territorial, and said I had no right to speak to her like that. I told him he should have explained the tradition to her himself, and that it wasn't fair to let her get her hopes up like that. He hung up on me. A few days later, my mom and dad got involved. My dad agreed with me and said it wasn't personal. The rule has always been the same, and Tessa should respect that. My mom, however, was more conflicted. She said maybe it was time to reevaluate the rule now that we're getting older and settling down. She also admitted that she felt awkward with Tessa calling her mom already, but didn't want to stir the pot. I told her that's exactly the issue. No one wants to confront Tessa, so it always falls to me, and then I'm the bad guy. Chris ended up boycotting the trip. He and Tessa didn't come at all, and it changed the whole vibe. Jeremy was upset too, and the week felt strained. My dad tried to make the best of it, but my mom kept saying how sad it was not having everyone there. Fast forward a month, and I haven't spoken to Chris since. We used to talk at least once a week. I texted him a few times, and he gave short answers or ignored me completely. Jeremy says he's still mad and thinks I humiliated Tessa. He said they're planning their own family vacation this fall with their parents, and that they don't want to include people who don't accept them as a couple. Here's where I might be the asshole. When Jeremy told me that, I said, well, she's not in the family yet, so maybe she should stop acting like she runs it. I was frustrated and didn't mean to be cruel, but it just slipped out. Jeremy told Chris, and now Chris has completely cut me off. No replies to anything. He even skipped my birthday last week, which is unheard of for him. I feel torn. On one hand, I do think Tessa is overstepping in a lot of ways and making assumptions about her place in our family. On the other hand, maybe I should have let my parents or Chris handle it, even if they were avoiding it. Maybe I overstepped by saying anything at all. But at the same time, I don't think it's fair to expect our family traditions to suddenly change just because Chris is engaged. We've all respected the rule before, and it's not like we're excluding her from everything, just one trip a year. And it's not even like I said she wasn't welcome ever. I just told her that one tradition was for family only, and technically, until she's married in, she isn't part of it in the way we define it. My fiancé thinks I was harsh, but not wrong. My mom is now saying we all need to grow up and start making space for partners, or we'll drive each other apart. She might be right, but part of me wonders, if someone joining the family means everyone has to walk on eggshells around her to avoid hurting her feelings, is she really the one being disrespected? So, AITA for telling my brother's fiancé she wasn't family yet and couldn't come on the trip? AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter move back in after she tried to get me kicked out of my own house. I, 47M, married my wife, Anna, 45F, 8 years ago. We met a couple years after my first wife passed away. I have a son, Jake, now 20, and she has a daughter, Sophie, now 22. Both were teens when we married. We made sure to take things slowly with blending our families, especially since both kids were struggling with the changes. But overall, I thought we were doing okay. We moved into the house I bought after my first wife passed. It's a 4-bedroom place in a nice neighborhood, and I made it clear from the start that the house was mine legally and financially. Anna had her own job and contributed to utilities and groceries, but the mortgage and deed were always mine. When we got married, we agreed to keep finances mostly separate, including property. We each had wills, and we discussed estate planning. I was upfront that my son would inherit the house, as it had been the family home since he was young. Now, here's where things started to get complicated. Sophie was always polite, but there was a subtle distance between us. I tried to be a positive presence in her life, but I didn't force a parental role. She would come over during college breaks and was never rude, just aloof. I thought maybe that was just her personality. She and Anna are close, so I figured that was enough. Last year, Sophie graduated and moved into a condo with friends in the city. It's about an hour away. We helped her move, celebrated, gave her some furniture and money to get started. She seemed excited and independent. Around the same time, Jake started college locally and commuted from home to save money. He and I get along really well. We have a lot in common and spend time working on home projects, watching sports, etc. Anna sometimes complained that Jake got more of my time than Sophie did, but Sophie wasn't around much, and I didn't think that was my fault. About 6 months ago, Sophie had a massive falling out with her roommates. I never got the full story, just that there were arguments over bills and someone's boyfriend moving in. She called Anna in tears, asking if she could move back in temporarily. Anna was sympathetic and said of course she could. I wasn't consulted, just informed. That rubbed me the wrong way a bit, but I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be the bad guy. We set her up in the guest room, and she moved back in within a few days. From day one, Sophie acted like she owned the place. She criticized Jake for being coddled, even though he was working part-time and taking a full class load. She made sarcastic comments about me hogging the living room, even though I was usually just watching TV in the evenings like I always had. She complained about food, household rules, like cleaning up after yourself, and once even said that the place still felt like a bachelor pad. I tried to ignore it, chalk it up to stress. But one night, about 2 months in, things hit a breaking point. Jake had a couple friends over for a game night. Nothing crazy, just some board games, pizza, and music. It was a Saturday, and they were done by 11. The next morning, Sophie cornered me in the kitchen and told me it was completely inappropriate for Jake to have guests when she needed quiet to decompress. I reminded her that she didn't pay rent and that we had all agreed Jake could have guests on weekends as long as they were respectful. She scoffed and walked away. Later that week, I came home from work and found Anna sitting quietly at the kitchen table. She looked upset, asked what was wrong, and she handed me an envelope. Inside was a printed letter, formal sounding, almost like a legal notice. It accused me of being emotionally neglectful to Sophie, of creating a hostile living environment, and it suggested I should move out for a while so Sophie could have a stable place to recover emotionally. I thought it was a joke. I actually laughed, but Anna didn't. She said Sophie had gone to a therapist who helped her write the letter, and that maybe, just maybe, it was worth considering. She told me she felt torn between her daughter's needs and our home dynamic. That's when I lost it. I asked her point blank, did she think it was appropriate for me to be asked to leave my own home for the sake of a 22-year-old adult who wasn't paying rent, who had already caused disruption, and who had never once made an effort to be part of the household beyond demanding respect? Anna didn't answer. I told her this was crossing a line, and if Sophie really felt unsafe or uncomfortable, she should find other arrangements. I said she had 2 weeks to move out. I offered to pay for a month of rent elsewhere to give her time. Anna was furious. She said I was abandoning her daughter and that I'd made it clear whose family mattered more. She moved out with Sophie within a week and went to stay with Anna's sister. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I've tried to reach out, but Anna has been distant. Jake is still at home, doing well, but he's been awkward about it too. He heard parts of the argument and thinks I did the right thing, but I can tell he misses the family being together. Now, here's where I might be the asshole. Last week, Anna called. Sophie's housing situation didn't work out, and she asked if Sophie could move back in just for a month or two while she looked for something else. I said no. I told Anna I couldn't trust that the situation wouldn't repeat itself, and that after what happened, I wasn't willing to put myself or Jake through that again. I suggested Sophie look into short-term rentals or stay with her father. Anna told me I was being vindictive and petty, that I was punishing Sophie for standing up for herself, that she was young and maybe she made mistakes, but family was supposed to forgive and support each other. She accused me of driving a wedge between us and said if our marriage failed, I'd only have myself to blame. I've been going back and forth ever since. Part of me thinks I was protecting my space, my son, and my sanity. Another part wonders if I overreacted. Maybe I could have set firmer boundaries instead of kicking her out. Maybe I let pride get in the way. But I keep going back to that letter. That moment of being told to leave my own house for someone who didn't even respect me. It felt like betrayal by both of them. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter move back in after she tried to push me out of my own home. AITA for kicking my sister out of my wedding after she showed up in a white dress and tried to change the seating chart. I, 29F, got married 2 weeks ago to my now husband, Mark, 31M, after being together for 5 years. Planning the wedding was one of the most stressful yet exciting experiences of my life. I tried to include my family as much as possible, especially my younger sister, Hannah, 26F, who I've always had a complicated relationship with. She's always been a bit extra, and growing up, it often felt like she needed to be the center of attention. Family gatherings revolved around her moods, her drama, and her spontaneous plans. I love her, but over the years I've learned to keep boundaries because if you don't, she will bulldoze right over you. When I got engaged, Hannah was supportive and excited, at least at first. She offered to help with planning and even threw a little engagement brunch for me, which was sweet. But slowly, things started shifting. She would critique everything I chose. When I picked my wedding colors, dusty blue and gold, she told me they were outdated. When I showed her my dress, she said it was a little plain and that I should consider something more couture. I brushed it off, thinking she just had a different taste. Things escalated when we started organizing the seating chart. Hannah is single, and she insisted on being seated at the table with my husband's single friends, specifically one guy, Jason, whom she met at my engagement party and apparently a crush on. I told her I had already arranged the tables to balance family and friends, and that she'd be sitting with our cousins and some mutual friends. She got sulky and said I was trying to sabotage her love life. Again, I let it slide. Fast forward to the day of the wedding. Everything was going smoothly. Hair and makeup done, dress on, photos started. Then my maid of honor pulls me aside and says, "Don't freak out, but you need to see what Hannah's wearing." I walk into the bridal suite, and there she is. My sister, in a long, white, floor-length gown. It wasn't a wedding dress per se, but it was white, lacy, and incredibly formal. Something you'd expect to see on a bride at a smaller ceremony or elopement. My jaw dropped. I asked her what she was doing, and she had the audacity to say, "It's off-white. And besides, it's designer. You should be flattered I brought some class to your Pinterest board wedding." I was livid. I told her to either change or leave. She refused. She said I was being shallow and jealous, and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. My mom stepped in and tried to mediate, telling Hannah to at least put on the shawl she'd brought to cover the dress more. Hannah agreed, but then removed the shawl 5 minutes later. As if that weren't enough, she took it upon herself to rearrange seating cards during cocktail hour. Apparently, she swapped her place card with someone else's to sit next to Jason. One of her friends noticed and told us. When I confronted her, she played innocent and said, "I was just trying to help. You put people in really awkward places." At that point, I lost it. I told her she was being disrespectful, selfish, and that I was done. I asked one of the groomsmen to escort her out. She caused a scene, crying and yelling that I was ruining the only good thing she had going. My mom started crying, my aunt tried to smooth things over, but I was firm. Hannah was out. The rest of the night went well. People were confused, of course, and some of our extended family thought I overreacted. A few cousins said I should have just ignored her behavior to avoid the drama, and now she's posting vague things on social media about being betrayed and erased from someone's life for existing. My parents are split. My dad thinks I did the right thing. My mom says I should have just let it go because it was one day and family is family. Mark supports me fully, but says he doesn't want this to create a rift between our families moving forward. I feel like I had every right to remove someone from my wedding who was actively trying to disrupt it, especially someone who's supposed to love and support me. But now I'm getting messages from relatives calling me cold, unforgiving, and even jealous of my sister. I'm starting to wonder if I was too harsh. It was my wedding, yes, but should I have just sucked it up to avoid long-term family drama? So, AITA for kicking my sister out of my wedding for wearing white and messing with the seating chart. AITA for calling my sister out at dinner for lying about being vegan and embarrassing her in front of her fiancé's family. So, I, 28F, have a younger sister, Rachel, 25F, who recently got engaged to her boyfriend of 2 years, Matt, 30M. Matt's family is pretty wealthy, very proper, and they're all big on health and lifestyle stuff. His parents run a chain of wellness retreats, and his sister is a well-known fitness influencer. They're the type that drinks green smoothies every morning and lectures people about pesticides and fruit. A few months ago, Rachel decided to go vegan, which honestly shocked everyone in the family. Rachel has always been a huge foodie and particularly a lover of meat, like rare steaks, ribs, lamb, you name it. Her favorite dish used to be my mom's beef stroganoff. But out of nowhere, she shows up to our mom's birthday dinner and announces she's vegan now and won't eat anything that came from a face. We all tried to be supportive, even though my mom was low-key stressed because she'd made all her usual dishes, none of which are vegan-friendly. Since then, Rachel's been super vocal about her veganism. She posts about it constantly on Instagram. Pictures of smoothie bowls, captions like "cruelty-free is the only way to live," and she even started a TikTok series called Meatless Moments where she tries vegan recipes. It's honestly been a whole personality shift. Now, here's where things get complicated. A week ago, Matt's family invited us all over for a big dinner to celebrate the engagement. It was a fancy affair, dinner catered at his parents' house, like 15 people total. Rachel insisted we all dress plant-based elegant, whatever that means. Before the dinner, she reminded everyone multiple times to please respect her lifestyle and not bring any meat dishes or ask her awkward questions about her food choices. Cool. We're all on board. My parents and I were a little tense about it. My dad's the type who thinks veganism is a fad, but we agreed not to say anything. So dinner starts. It's all vegan food. Honestly, really good stuff. I'm not vegan myself, but I can appreciate well-made food. Everything's going fine until we're a few glasses of wine in, and I go into the kitchen to find Rachel literally hunched over the kitchen island, shoving prosciutto into her mouth straight from the charcuterie board they had out for appetizers. I kind of just stared at her and said, what are you doing? And she jumped like a raccoon caught in the trash. She immediately started shushing me and saying, "Don't say anything, don't be dramatic, it's just a tiny cheat, it doesn't count." I was honestly floored. She told me to be cool and promised she'd go back to eating only vegan food in a minute. I let it go for the moment, but then at the dinner table, she kept going on and on about how hard it is to be vegan in a world that doesn't cater to people with ethics. She literally told Matt's mom that she sometimes cries when she walks past the meat aisle in grocery stores. I was biting my tongue, but she would not stop. At one point, she made a toast to our plant-based future and winked at Matt like they were some sustainable power couple. I finally snapped. I said, "You mean a plant-based future with a side of cured meats?" Rachel froze, turned pale, and said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Don't act like I didn't just see you 10 minutes ago shoveling prosciutto in your mouth in the kitchen." The table went dead silent. Matt looked confused, his mom looked horrified, and my dad choked on his wine, trying not to laugh. Rachel tried to play it off like I was joking, but I said, "You literally begged me not to say anything while you were chewing it." Rachel got up and left the table crying. Matt followed her, and the rest of us sat there in the most painfully awkward silence. After a few minutes, Matt came back and told us dinner was over and we should probably leave. My parents were upset at me for ruining the evening, and later that night Rachel sent me a string of angry texts saying I'd humiliated her in front of her future in-laws, sabotaged her relationship, and been jealous and petty because she was finally doing something meaningful with her life. For what it's worth, I didn't do it out of jealousy. I just genuinely couldn't stomach her acting holier-than-thou about her ethics, while secretly eating meat behind closed doors. I also don't think it's fair for her to weaponize veganism as a way to get attention and then lie about it so blatantly. My parents think I should have just kept my mouth shut and not rocked the boat, especially since it wasn't technically my business. They said she's trying hard to impress Matt's family, and I should have let it go. But I don't know. Isn't it worse to lie to someone you're going to marry and their family, just for image? Matt hasn't said much since, and Rachel's now blocked me on everything. My mom thinks the engagement might be in trouble now, and she's blaming me for being vindictive. So, AITA for calling her out. Or was it fair to say something when she was so clearly being a hypocrite? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to help my brother financially after he used my college fund to propose to his girlfriend. I, 24M, am the youngest of 3 kids. My older brother Jake, 31M, and sister Liz, 29F, were always pretty close growing up while I was more the quiet, bookish one. Our parents weren't wealthy, but my dad had a good job as a union electrician and my mom worked part-time as a receptionist. They started saving for our education when we were young, and although they couldn't afford full rides, they told us each of us had a college fund set aside to help us get started. Jake ended up not going to college. He barely finished high school, honestly. He's always been the kind of guy who talks big, jumps from job to job, and blames everyone else when things go wrong. He got into sales and had some early success, but also had a habit of living beyond his means. My sister Liz is very smart and went to community college before transferring to a state school, using her fund responsibly. As for me, I always had big plans. I worked hard in school and got into a good university to study biomedical engineering. I commuted from home for the first 2 years to save money, worked part-time tutoring, and was very careful with what I spent. The plan was to transfer to an out-of-state program in my junior year because it had one of the best labs for my research focus. My parents were supportive and told me my fund would be enough to cover the difference. Fast forward to about 3 months before my planned transfer. This was in 2022. I get a call from the financial aid office telling me there's an issue with the expected funds from my 529 plan, the educational account my parents had set up. I call my dad immediately, and after some hemming and hawing, he tells me that there's been a complication, and I need to come home so we can talk. When I get home, my parents are sitting in the living room, looking incredibly uncomfortable. My mom is crying. My dad finally tells me the truth. The account was drained. Not just dipped into, completely emptied. Around $38,000 gone. I was speechless. At first, I thought maybe it was a scam or identity theft. But then my mom says something like, "We didn't know until it was too late. We thought he would pay it back." I immediately asked who. Jake. It turns out Jake had access to the login info for all our college funds because years ago, my dad had let him help with setting up online banking when they were switching everything over. Jake had been in some financial trouble after a bad real estate deal and had borrowed money from some sketchy people. He used the entire balance of my 529 plan to not only pay off those debts, but also fund an elaborate proposal to his girlfriend, complete with a trip to Italy, a custom ring, a private chef, and a videographer. I was beyond livid. I stormed out, told Jake he was dead to me, and refused to speak to him. My parents begged me to reconsider, said Jake promised to pay it back in monthly installments, but of course he hasn't paid back a single dollar. He claims he's working on it, but has since leased a new truck and posted Instagram stories from Vegas and Miami. His girlfriend, now wife, apparently has no idea what he did. I ended up deferring my transfer and spent the next year applying for scholarships, picking up a second job, and taking out private loans to make it happen. I graduated last December, and I'm now working a full-time job in medical device development. Last week, Jay called me out of nowhere. He said he needed help covering rent because his wife just lost her job and things are tight. I hung up on him. He tried again 2 days later, this time texting that family supports family and blood is thicker than water. I replied, "You stole my future to pay for a vacation. Lose my number." Now the drama has spread to the rest of the family. My parents are staying out of it, which to me feels like cowardice. But Liz told me I was being cold and that Jake made a mistake under pressure and he was just trying to fix his life. She says I should at least lend him something, even if I don't forgive him. I told her that if the situation were reversed, I would be in jail. Now some cousins are getting involved and saying I'm holding a grudge and making things worse. One even said, "You're successful now, what's a few $100 to help your brother?" But to me, that's not the point. It's the principle of it. Jake has never apologized. Not once. He's never even acknowledged the magnitude of what he did. He stole from me and then used that money to play Instagram husband while I was left holding the bag. Now I'm wondering if I'm being too harsh. I don't want to be vindictive, but I also feel like if I cave, I'm just telling him and everyone else that there are no consequences for screwing over your own family. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to help my brother financially after he stole my college fund to propose to his girlfriend. AITA for refusing to let my mom move in with us after my dad passed away, even though we have space and my wife's parents live with us. My 34M. Dad passed away unexpectedly 4 months ago. He had a heart attack while working in the backyard, and by the time the ambulance got there, it was too late. He was 63, still working full-time, and had always been the one managing things between him and my mom, 58F. His death rocked our entire family, but especially my mom, who, to be fair, never really handled anything financial, logistical, or even practical. That was all on my dad. She was more of the traditional housewife type and very emotionally dependent on him. I have one younger sister, 30F, but she lives across the country, doesn't own a home, rents a one-bedroom with her fiancé, and has made it clear she's not in a position to help my mom in a big way. So everything has kind of fallen on me. My wife, 35F, and I live in a 5-bedroom home. We have 3 young kids, ages 6, 4, and 2, and her parents, 60M and 61F, live with us. They moved in during COVID to help with childcare when we both had to keep working and daycare shut down. It worked out surprisingly well. Her parents are kind, helpful, and very low maintenance. They have their own suite in the basement with a private entrance and bathroom, and we split groceries and utilities. They also pay us rent monthly to help with the mortgage. After my dad died, my mom initially said she wanted to stay in her house because it had all her memories. She was emotional and grieving, which we understood. I offered to help her with bills or hire someone to help with home maintenance stuff, but she said she'd manage. A month ago, she called me crying, saying she couldn't handle it anymore. The house reminded her too much of my dad. She felt isolated, and she was getting overwhelmed with bills and housework. She asked if she could move in with us just for a while. I paused and told her I'd talk it over with my wife. When I brought it up, my wife got very quiet. Eventually, she told me she didn't feel comfortable with my mom moving in. Not because she doesn't love her, but because she has a very intense personality and can be emotionally draining. Here's the thing. My mom is very different from my wife's parents. She's high anxiety, talks constantly, oversteps boundaries, and gets very emotional over small things. She also has a tendency to make backhanded comments when stressed, especially about parenting or homemaking. When she's around, the energy of the whole house changes. Even my kids get tense because she'll freak out if they're too loud or don't say please quickly enough. We've hosted her for holidays, and it's usually stressful. My wife ends up picking up the slack emotionally and logistically because my mom kind of expects to be taken care of. It's not malicious. It's just how she's always been. I told my mom that we weren't in a place to have her move in and that I'd help her find a smaller apartment nearby and help with moving costs, deposits, etc. I also offered to have dinner with her twice a week and involve her more with the kids. She was devastated. She said she couldn't believe I was choosing my wife's parents over my own mother. She said I was abandoning her in her hour of need, that after everything she gave up for me, I was repaying her by putting her out like trash. I tried to explain it wasn't about choosing sides, but about maintaining a livable environment for everyone, including our kids. I told her the dynamic with my wife's parents was different. They are independent, practical, and low maintenance. She didn't take it well. She hasn't spoken to me directly in 3 weeks. She sends passive-aggressive texts or sends my sister to guilt-trip me. My sister says I'm being cold and transactional, and that family doesn't do cost-benefit analysis on each other. I feel terrible. I don't want my mom to feel alone, especially now. But I also know that letting her move in would be massively disruptive, especially when we already have 5 people under one roof, 3 of them under 6 years old. My wife has quietly thanked me for having her back, but I can tell she feels guilty too. I wonder if I'm being selfish or letting my wife dictate too much. But at the same time, I feel like the emotional cost would be too high for everyone if my mom lived with us. Still, I can't shake the feeling that I'm letting her down when she needs me most. So, AITA for refusing to let my grieving mom move in with us, even though we technically have space and already house my in-laws. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she disinvited my fiancé. So, I, 29M, have a younger sister, Emma, 25F, who is getting married next month to her fiancé, Greg, 27M. I've always been very close with Emma, and our family is pretty tight-knit. Growing up, we did everything together, sports, holidays, family trips, and whatnot. My fiancée, Sophie, 27F, and I have been together for about 4 years, and she's a huge part of my life. A couple of months ago, Emma announced that she was getting married, and she asked me to be her best man. Of course, I was thrilled. We started discussing the details, and I was happy to help her plan and support her however I could. However, things took a turn when the guest list started getting finalized. Sophie and I live together, and she's been a part of my family gatherings for years now. She's friendly, kind, and generally gets along well with everyone. So, naturally, she was looking forward to attending the wedding as well. At first, Emma seemed fine with Sophie being there. But about a month ago, she texted me asking if I could talk. When we spoke on the phone, Emma told me that she didn't want Sophie to attend the wedding anymore. I was immediately taken aback. I asked her why, and she said that Sophie had caused some tension at a family event a while back. Apparently, during a dinner a few months ago, Sophie made a comment about how expensive the wedding planning was becoming. Emma didn't think it was appropriate, and she didn't like the tone of Sophie's comment. Sophie apologized immediately, saying it wasn't meant to come off the wrong way, but Emma said it rubbed her the wrong way, and she had been harboring resentment ever since. I thought this was ridiculous. Sophie didn't mean to offend anyone, but Emma insisted, saying that she just didn't want any negative energy at the wedding, and she was concerned about the vibe it would create. She told me that if Sophie came, it would ruin the entire day for her. I tried to explain that it was just a small misunderstanding and that Sophie really did mean no harm, but Emma was firm in her decision. I was really hurt by this, not just for Sophie's sake, but also for mine. We've been in each other's lives for so long, and it felt like Emma was throwing away our relationship over something so small. I told her I didn't feel comfortable coming to the wedding if Sophie wasn't invited, and I needed some time to think about it. Emma begged me to reconsider, saying it would cause major drama if I didn't come and that she'd never forgive me if I didn't stand by her on her big day. But for me, it was a deal breaker. Sophie is an important part of my life, and I wasn't going to just leave her out. A few days later, I got a text from Emma saying that she was disinviting me from the wedding if I couldn't come without Sophie. It was a huge slap in the face, but I stood my ground. I told her that if she wanted to go through with this, then I wouldn't be attending, and that was the end of it. We haven't spoken since, and the rest of the family is in the middle of it all. Some of them think Emma's being unreasonable, while others think I should just get over it and show up to support my sister. My parents are on Emma's side, saying that she's been planning this wedding for so long and deserves to have it the way she wants. They think I'm being overly dramatic and that it's just a wedding, but I don't think I'm being dramatic. I just don't understand how she can cut me off over something so trivial, especially when I've been there for her every step of the way. I feel like she's choosing to prioritize the wedding over our relationship. I've had friends tell me I'm in the right, saying that if she can't accept Sophie, then she's not really valuing me. But others, including a few cousins, are saying I should just go, put aside my feelings, and be there for my sister. I don't want to make this about me, but I feel like this is a breaking point in our relationship. I'm torn. I want to be there for Emma, but I also feel like I'm being asked to choose between her and the woman I'm planning my future with. I understand it's her big day, but I don't think it's fair that I should have to leave Sophie behind. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she disinvited my fiancé? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she invited me as a last-minute guest, knowing I don't get along with her fiancé? I, 28F, have a pretty complicated relationship with my sister, Lily, 32F. We were very close growing up, but over the years, we've drifted apart. I don't want to get into all the reasons, but long story short, she's become very different from the person I knew, and we just don't see eye to eye on a lot of things anymore. One of the biggest issues between us has been her fiancé, Jake. I've never liked him. I know it sounds bad, but hear me out. When I first met him, he came off as a bit smug and condescending, which rubbed me the wrong way. Over time, I saw other things that bothered me, like how he would often make passive-aggressive remarks about my career and lifestyle, which made me feel small and dismissed. I've tried to be polite, but it's been hard to hide my dislike for him. Lily always brushed it off as me being too sensitive, and I started to feel like maybe I was just being petty or overreacting. Fast forward a few years, and they get engaged. While I was initially happy for Lily, my feelings toward Jake haven't changed, and if anything, I've found more reasons to not like him. He has a way of talking about people behind their backs, including family members, and it really turned me off. I'm not the type to gossip, but when people speak ill of others, especially when it's in the family, it doesn't sit right with me. I voiced my concerns to Lily a few times, but she always defended him, saying he's just misunderstood and has a dry sense of humor. I get that she's in love with him, but it's like she couldn't see how he treated others. It made me uncomfortable, and we started arguing more often about it. Eventually, we just agreed to avoid talking about him, which was honestly a relief for me. Then, Lily got engaged. She wanted me to be her maid of honor, but I turned it down. I didn't want to be part of the wedding at all because of Jake. It was a hard decision, but I knew I couldn't pretend to be okay with everything, and I felt like it would just cause more tension between us. I felt bad for turning down the maid of honor role, but I knew it was for the best. I was still invited to the wedding as a guest, and I accepted, not happily, but because I didn't want to cause a huge family rift. But I was clear with Lily that I was not going to be part of any of the wedding prep or festivities. I showed up on the day, but I kept my distance from Jake as much as possible. A few months ago, Lily called me up and said she was reconsidering her wedding guest list. She told me that Jake's parents had insisted on inviting all their relatives, which meant some people she didn't want at the wedding would be attending, and there was some tension about seating arrangements. I didn't think much of it first, but then she dropped the bomb. She told me that Jake had specifically asked her to uninvite me. She said he felt uncomfortable around me, especially because of some of the tension that had come up before, and he didn't want me attending the wedding at all. I was shocked. I thought we had at least reached a place of mutual understanding where I could be there for her, even if I didn't like Jake. But apparently, Jake was pushing hard for me to not attend, and Lily had started to side with him. She told me that she had to think about the peace of the day, and that maybe it would be best if I didn't come. She told me that she didn't want to cause any drama at her wedding, and I completely understood that. But here's where I really lost it. After saying that she didn't want any drama, she turned around and invited me back, but under the condition that I would have to make nice with Jake for the whole wedding weekend. She said it was non-negotiable. She told me it would mean a lot to her if I could just get along for one day, and that it would make her happy to see her whole family together. I told her no. I refused. I told her that if I wasn't good enough to attend without making nice with Jake, then I just wouldn't go at all. I don't like him, and I'm not going to fake it for the sake of her wedding day. She was furious, calling me selfish and saying that I was making everything about myself. She said it was her wedding and that I needed to suck it up and be there for her. The more I thought about it, the more upset I got. I don't think I'm being unreasonable. I'm not asking for her to choose between me and Jake, but I also don't think I should be forced into pretending to like him for a day, especially when I've already made an effort to attend her wedding despite my feelings. She's always made excuses for his behavior, and I've just had enough. I've tried to be respectful, but he's rude and manipulative, and I'm not going to let him walk all over me to keep the peace for her. Now, my family is split. Some say I'm being petty, that it's just a wedding, and that I should do whatever it takes to support her. Others say I have every right to refuse, that I've made my stance clear, and shouldn't have to endure that kind of treatment from someone I don't get along with. Lily's been blowing up my phone, and I've barely responded. I feel like this whole thing is a mess, and it's getting worse by the day. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she insisted I make nice with her fiancé, knowing how much I dislike him. AITA for telling my sister she can't use our family's heirloom jewelry for her wedding. I, 28F, have an older sister, Emily, 34F. We've always had a pretty good relationship growing up, but it's been a little rocky since we both became adults. Emily is married and has 2 kids, and I've been dating my boyfriend, 32M, Jake, for 2 years. We've been talking about getting engaged for a while, but we're not there yet. Now, the situation that's caused all the tension is related to a piece of jewelry that has been in our family for generations. It's a set of antique diamond earrings and a matching necklace that were passed down to my mother, who then passed them down to me. It's something that's always been considered special, a family heirloom that the women in our family wear for their weddings. My mom wore them when she married my dad, and both my grandmother and great-grandmother wore them as well. It's not just jewelry. It's a tradition, a legacy. Earlier this year, my sister and her husband, Tom, had their 10th wedding anniversary. They renewed their vows in a small ceremony. Emily asked if she could wear the family heirloom jewelry for her anniversary celebration, and I immediately said no. At that time, I explained that I was planning to wear the set for my wedding when I eventually get engaged. Emily was disappointed, but seemed to accept it. Fast forward a few months, and my boyfriend and I started having more serious conversations about marriage. I'm not expecting an engagement anytime soon, but we've talked about it in passing. One evening, my sister and I were chatting, and she mentioned that she was planning her daughter's, my niece's, wedding. Emily told me she was thinking about offering the heirloom set to her daughter for her wedding, whenever that might be, and she was asking me if I thought it was a good idea. At first, I didn't really think much of it, but the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. I felt weird about it. I didn't say anything at first, but after a few days, I brought it up to my mom, who also seemed a little surprised by the suggestion. My mom reminded me that I was the next in line to wear the jewelry for my wedding, and it's something that's been passed down to each generation's firstborn daughter for a significant event. This made me feel like I had a right to it for my own wedding whenever that happens. So, I decided to have a conversation with Emily. I told her that I wasn't comfortable with her offering the heirloom jewelry to my niece, especially when I haven't even had the chance to wear it myself yet. I explained that I felt it was important to preserve the tradition for my wedding, and as the next person in line, I thought it should be reserved for me. My sister got really upset and accused me of being selfish. She said I was acting like she didn't have a say in the matter since it's technically family property, and that I was trying to control something that wasn't mine to control. She pointed out that I wasn't even engaged yet, and who knows when that would happen. So why couldn't she let her daughter wear it now? She also mentioned that the family is supposed to share things, and this felt like me hoarding something for my future wedding, which she thought was a bit much. We argued for a while, and it ended with me telling her I didn't think she should be planning to offer the jewelry to my niece, and that I expected her to respect the family tradition. After that conversation, things got tense between us, and she's barely spoken to me since. My mom and dad are staying neutral on the matter. They said it's ultimately my choice since I'm the next in line, but they also don't want to cause any more tension in the family. Emily, on the other hand, has been telling other relatives about the situation, making me look like I'm trying to be difficult and unreasonable. Some of my cousins have sent me messages saying I'm being too rigid and that I should be open to letting others enjoy the heirlooms. One of my aunts even said that she's sure the jewelry would look beautiful on my niece and that maybe I shouldn't be so attached to it. I understand the arguments on both sides. I can see how Emily feels that the jewelry should be shared and enjoyed by more people, but I also feel strongly about the tradition. It's something my family has cherished for generations, and I want to carry on that tradition when my time comes. I don't want to lose my relationship with my sister over this, but I also don't want to feel like I'm giving up something that's important to me. I know this might seem petty to some people, but it feels like more than just jewelry to me. It feels like a symbol of the bond one have with my family and the legacy that's been passed down through the generations. So, AITA for telling my sister she can't use our family's heirloom jewelry for her daughter's wedding? Should I have been more understanding of her request, or was I right to stand firm on the tradition? AITA for telling my sister she's being unreasonable by demanding I pay for her wedding expenses? I, 28F, am in a pretty tough spot with my sister, Rachel, 30F, right now. It all started when she got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Tim, 32M. I've always been close to Rachel, and I'm really happy for her, but things have taken a turn that I didn't expect, and now we're barely speaking. Let me explain. Rachel and Tim have been together for about 6 years. They've always had a great relationship, but they've never been the type to splurge on anything. Both of them come from modest backgrounds, and they've always been really practical with their money. Tim works as an IT consultant, and Rachel works in marketing, so they're both financially stable, but not super rich. A few months ago, Rachel announced she was getting married. We were all excited, of course, and I was happy to help out with whatever she needed. I've always been a supportive sister, and I wanted to be there for her, especially for her wedding day. However, things quickly started to get weird when she began asking for money from me and our parents for wedding costs. At first, it seemed like a small request. She asked if I could contribute to the venue rental. I agreed because I figured it would be a good way to show my support, and weddings can be expensive. Then, she asked me to help with the cost of the photographer. I said yes again, though I was starting to feel like this was going a bit overboard. But I still didn't want to rock the boat. That's when things started to escalate. Over the next few weeks, Rachel kept adding more and more expenses to the list. She wanted me to pay for the floral arrangements, the catering, the cake, the wedding dress alterations, and even a portion of the honeymoon costs. She claimed it would help her and Tim have the perfect wedding without them going into debt. At this point, I started to get really uncomfortable. The wedding was starting to look like it was turning into a financial burden, and it was becoming clear that my sister expected me to cover a significant portion of it. Now, let me make it clear, I don't make a fortune. I'm not poor by any means, but I live in a modest apartment and have student loans to pay off. I don't have thousands of dollars just lying around. I've been saving for a vacation I've been wanting to take, and I've been contributing to my retirement fund. The idea of sinking so much money into someone else's wedding, especially when they were already financially stable, felt off to me. When I finally voiced my concerns, Rachel got really upset. She said I was being selfish and unsupportive, and that I was taking away from her special day by not helping more. She kept saying that I was her only sibling, and she couldn't imagine not having me involved in every aspect of her wedding. She said that family should help out with these things, and that's what she expected from me. At this point, I started to feel trapped. She was pressuring me so much that it almost felt like I didn't have a choice. She said if I didn't help her out, it would ruin the wedding, and she would be disappointed in me. I don't know about you, but that's a lot of emotional manipulation. I kept telling her I just couldn't afford to contribute so much money, but she was adamant that I was the only one who could really help her out. Finally, I snapped and told her I wouldn't be able to pay for any more expenses. I explained that I loved her, but I had my own financial priorities and I couldn't go into debt for her wedding. I told her that if she wanted to have such an extravagant wedding, she and Tim needed to find a way to make it work on their own. Rachel was furious. She accused me of abandoning her, and she said that I didn't understand how important this wedding was to her. She said that if I really loved her, I would help make her dream wedding a reality. She also told me that it wasn't just about the money. It was about being part of every step of her big day. She said I was being incredibly hurtful and that she didn't know if she could forgive me. I've tried to talk to her since then, but she hasn't been open to listening. She's told me I'm not a true sister if I can't support her like this, and that I'm being ridiculous for not understanding why she needs me to contribute financially. She's also been posting about how disappointed she is in her family on social media, which feels like a public attack. Our parents are caught in the middle of this. They're upset with me for not helping, but they also think Rachel is asking for too much. They've been trying to play peacekeeper, but they've made it clear that they think I should help out more. To be honest, I feel like everyone is piling on me, and I'm starting to feel like I'm the bad guy. I've been thinking a lot about this situation, and I still feel like I made the right choice. It's not that I don't want to support her. I do. I want her to have a happy wedding day. But at the same time, I don't think it's fair for her to expect me to shoulder such a huge portion of the financial burden. It doesn't seem right for her to put that kind of pressure on me, and I don't think it's healthy for her to expect me to sacrifice my financial well-being for her wedding. So, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding expenses? I love her, but I feel like I've already done my part, and I'm not sure how much more I can give without putting myself in a difficult position. I want to know if I'm being unreasonable here, or if she's asking too much. AITA for refusing to let my sister use my wedding dress? So here's the deal. I, 29F, got married last year. I had a pretty simple wedding, just close family and friends. I'm not big on traditions, and I didn't grow up with any real expectations when it came to weddings. But one thing I did want was to wear my mom's wedding dress. My mom passed away a few years ago, and she had always told me that one day I would wear her dress. It was important to me, so I saved it and had it altered to fit me. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it was special, and I loved it. My sister, 32F, and I have always had a somewhat strained relationship. I wouldn't say we're enemies, but we've never been particularly close. Growing up, she was the golden child, the one who got all the attention. I was always the quiet one, who didn't really fit in with the family dynamic. She was always quick to let me know how much more attractive, successful, and better she was at everything, which I never found to be particularly helpful or motivating. We've been civil since I got married, but I wouldn't say she was overly involved in the planning. She showed up to the wedding, and everything went smoothly. At least I thought so. A few months after the wedding, I was talking to my sister on the phone when she casually mentioned that she was planning her wedding, which was set for next year. I congratulated her and asked if she had picked out a dress yet. That's when she dropped the bombshell. She told me that she wanted to wear my wedding dress. At first, I thought she was joking. I mean, it was my mom's dress, and I had worn it at my wedding. I politely told her that I wasn't comfortable with her wearing it. It felt wrong to me. My wedding dress was meaningful to me, and I wanted to keep it as a family heirloom. Plus, she had always been vocal about not understanding my attachment to the dress. She had once even said, "It's just a dress. Why does it even matter?" She wasn't pleased with my response. She said I was being selfish, that it was just a piece of fabric and didn't mean as much as I was making out to be. She argued that if I was willing to part with the dress for a good cause, she would take good care of it and ensure it had a second life at her wedding. I told her I wasn't ready to let go of it and that I wanted to keep it for sentimental reasons. She kept pushing, telling me that she wouldn't feel complete in her own wedding without wearing the dress. It all came to a head when we had a family dinner last week. She brought it up again in front of everyone. She looked directly at me and said, "It's my turn to wear the dress now. You got your special day, and I want mine." Everyone around the table was silent for a few seconds. My dad, who isn't very vocal, just kind of sighed and said, "Can't you both just be happy with your own weddings?" But then my aunt chimed in, agreeing with my sister, saying that I was being unreasonable and that my sister had every right to want to wear the dress since it was such an important family piece. I was so angry and hurt, but I didn't want to make a scene at the dinner, so I just told my sister that I wasn't going to let her wear it. I said I was sorry, but it wasn't something I could agree to. My sister got visibly upset and stormed out of the dinner, and the rest of the night was awkward. My dad later pulled me aside and told me that I needed to work things out with my sister, that I shouldn't let something like a dress come between us. I feel like I've been put in a really difficult position here. I understand that my sister wants to have a special day, but I can't shake the feeling that she's completely disregarding how much this dress means to me. I've tried to explain that to her, but it doesn't seem to get through. Now I'm questioning whether I'm being too attached to an object and whether I should just let it go. The last thing I want is for this to be the thing that ruins our relationship completely, but I also don't feel like I should have to give up something that means so much to me. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister wear my wedding dress. AITA for not attending my best friend's wedding after she didn't include my child in the ceremony. So, I, 33F, have been best friends with Emily, 33F, since we were kids. We've been through thick and thin, and I honestly consider her sister. When I found out she was getting married to her longtime boyfriend, Adam, 35M, I was ecstatic for her. I've been so supportive of their relationship and have helped with wedding planning whenever I could. We've always been very close, so I expected to be right there by her side as her maid of honor. Now, here's where things start to get a bit complicated. I have a son, Jack, 7, from a previous relationship. He's my world, and while I do my best to keep him involved in every part of my life, Emily and I have always had a bit of a complicated relationship when it comes to Jack. Emily has never been a huge fan of kids. It's something I've known about her for years, but she's always been polite and put up with Jack when she had to, even though she's more comfortable in adult-only settings. I've never pushed her to spend more time with Jack than she was comfortable with, but I've also always made it clear that he's a package deal. I can't be away from him for too long, and I always bring him along to things unless it's a very specific adult-only event. So, when Emily started planning her wedding, she told me that she wanted to keep the ceremony and reception child-free. I was a little surprised, but I wasn't upset. I understood that some people feel that way about their big day, so I didn't make a fuss. But when she gave me the details, she said that she expected all guests to leave their kids with babysitters or family members. She also told me that she was really looking forward to having an adult-only atmosphere and that she hoped I would be able to attend the whole event without worrying about Jack. I thought about it for a long time. I really wanted to be there for Emily, but at the same time, I couldn't imagine going to her wedding and leaving Jack behind. I'm a single mom, and there's no one else who could watch him for the whole day and night. Plus, Jack's never really been away from me for more than a few hours, and he's been through a lot emotionally over the years. His dad and I don't have the best co-parenting relationship, and Jack tends to get anxious and upset if I'm gone for too long. So, I started to feel like I might not be able to attend her wedding at all. I decided to have an honest conversation with Emily about my concerns. I told her that I would love to be there for her wedding, but that I couldn't leave Jack behind for the entire event. I explained that he's young, and I don't feel comfortable being away from him for such a long time, especially since he doesn't really know many people who would be willing to babysit him. I asked if there was any way she would consider making an exception for him, even if he was just there for part of the day, like for the ceremony. Emily was immediately upset. She told me that her wedding was her special day and that she didn't want to deal with kids running around during the ceremony or reception. She insisted that she had planned the event to be child-free for a reason and that it wouldn't be the same if I brought Jack. I tried to explain that I understood her desire for an adult-only event, but I couldn't be away from my child. She didn't seem to budge on her stance. The conversation ended with me feeling frustrated and conflicted. I knew how important this day was to her, but I also felt like she wasn't respecting my situation as a mother. I spent a lot of time going back and forth about whether I should just go to the wedding and leave Jack with a sitter, which would be stressful for both of us, or if I should stand my ground and skip the wedding altogether. A few days later, Emily sent me a message saying that she understood if I couldn't attend the wedding because of my son. She even said that she hoped I wouldn't let it ruin our friendship. But then a few more days passed, and I realized that she hadn't sent me any official invitation yet. I felt like I was being quietly excluded, and it started to sting. It felt like she had made her decision without even asking me again or really trying to work out a compromise. In the end, I made the decision to decline the wedding. I didn't attend the ceremony, and I didn't go to the reception. I couldn't just leave my son behind for the entire day, and I didn't feel comfortable going if my presence wasn't truly wanted. I texted her and told her that I loved her and would always support her, but I couldn't attend her wedding. She replied saying that she understood, but also mentioned that she was really hurt by my decision and that she hoped I could get over my issues with Jack not being allowed there. That was a few weeks ago, and things have been a little strained between us since then. Emily has barely reached out to me, and while I've tried to keep the lines of communication open, I can't shake the feeling that she's disappointed in me. I feel like she's upset because I didn't prioritize her special day over my role as a mom, and it's been hard for me to reconcile the two sides of the situation. I've started to wonder if I made the right choice. Was I being selfish by not attending her wedding, or was it reasonable for me to prioritize my son and his needs? I just feel like I can't win here. So, AITA for choosing my child over my best friend's wedding? AITA for not letting my brother-in-law move in after his wife kicked him out? So, some backstory. I, 30F, am married to my husband, 32M. Let's call him Jack. We've been married for 5 years, and we have 2 kids, ages 3 and 5. Jack has a brother, Kyle, 33M, who has been married to his wife, Anna, 30F, for 8 years. Anna and Kyle have a son, Sam, who is 7. Our families are very close, and we see each other regularly for dinners, holidays, and get-togethers. But things between Kyle and Anna have been rocky for a while now. I don't know all the details, but I do know that Kyle has had issues with drinking, and it's caused some strain in their relationship. A couple of weeks ago, Kyle called Jack late at night, asking if he could stay with us for a little while. He said Anna kicked him out and that he needed a place to stay. Jack, being the good brother that he is, immediately agreed and told Kyle to come over the next day. I wasn't too happy about it because, honestly, I don't think Kyle and Anna's relationship is all that stable, and I didn't want him bringing that drama into our home. I also didn't want to deal with Kyle's drinking issues and the potential chaos it could cause. But Jack insisted it was temporary, and I agreed, though reluctantly. The first couple of days weren't too bad. Kyle mostly stayed in the guest room and didn't cause any issues. However, I started noticing little things that were making me uncomfortable. He would drink beer in the living room while my kids were running around, and sometimes he'd pass out on the couch, leaving it a mess. One morning, he came downstairs with a hangover and barely acknowledged my kids, who were asking him to play. That bothered me because I'm really careful about how my kids are exposed to adults and their behavior, especially with alcohol involved. After a few days, things started escalating. Kyle wasn't working, and he spent a lot of time sitting around, drinking and playing video games. He wasn't being helpful around the house, and it was really starting to get on my nerves. I tried to keep my cool because I didn't want to add to the tension, but I was getting frustrated. Jack didn't seem to notice how uncomfortable I was, or maybe he just didn't care. He'd spend most of the evenings out with Kyle, drinking and chatting while I was stuck with the kids. I tried talking to Jack about it. I told him that I wasn't okay with Kyle's behavior and that it was affecting the family. Jack didn't seem to take it seriously. He said that Kyle was going through a tough time and needed our support, and that I should try to be more understanding. But I don't think Jack fully understood how bad things were getting. It wasn't just about Kyle's drinking. It was about the lack of respect for our space and our routines. It was like having an extra child in the house that I didn't sign up for. Then things really hit a breaking point. One night, Kyle came home drunk and started yelling at Jack about Anna. It was really uncomfortable. He was blaming her for everything that went wrong in his life, saying she didn't support him and that she was the reason he drank. At that point, I had to step in. I told him to calm down and that this wasn't the place for him to have an outburst like that. Kyle didn't take it well. He started yelling at me, calling me judgmental, and saying I didn't understand what he was going through. It was awkward. I didn't want my kids hearing that kind of language. Jack tried to calm him down, but I could tell Kyle wasn't interested in hearing anything anyone had to say. The next morning, after a night of arguing, Kyle came to me and asked if he could stay for a few more weeks. He said he didn't have anywhere else to go and that he was just going through a rough patch. I couldn't take it anymore. I told him that I didn't feel comfortable with him staying any longer and that he needed to figure something else out. I told him I didn't feel safe having him in the house with the kids, especially when he was drinking and causing so much tension. Kyle was furious. He said I was being unreasonable and unsupportive, and that he couldn't believe I was throwing him out when he had nowhere else to go. I told Jack about the conversation, and he was furious with me. He said I was being too harsh, and that family is supposed to stick together through tough times. He argued that I should have been more understanding of Kyle's situation. He also said I was making it worse by putting my foot down and not allowing Kyle to stay. I tried to explain that it wasn't about not supporting Kyle, but about protecting our family and our home. But Jack just didn't get it. He said that by kicking Kyle out, I was making him choose between me and his brother, and I was putting him in a horrible position. I didn't want Jack to feel like he had to choose, but at the same time, I wasn't willing to keep living like that. So, Kyle ended up staying with some friends, and it's been tense between me and Jack ever since. Jack hasn't really spoken to me much about it since, and when we do talk, it's usually about other things. But there's this underlying tension that's hard to ignore. My friends and family have mixed opinions. Some say I did the right thing, while others think I was too harsh on Kyle and should have been more supportive. I've even had a few people say that I should have just let it go and that family drama shouldn't affect my decisions about who stays in our house. I'm just feeling really conflicted. I know I did what I thought was best for my kids and our family, but now I'm worried that I might have hurt my relationship with Jack. He's still upset with me, and I'm not sure how to fix things. AITA for kicking my brother-in-law out when he had nowhere to go. AITA for not supporting my sister's decision to quit her job and move in with her boyfriend despite her financial struggles. So, a bit of backstory. I, 29M, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F. We've always been close, but recently, things have gotten a little rocky between us. I've always been the responsible one, the one who has a stable job, makes a decent living, and has a clear direction in life. Emily, on the other hand, has always been a bit more carefree, and let's just say that her career choices haven't been the most practical. For the last few years, Emily worked in retail and struggled to make ends meet. She never seemed to take her financial situation seriously, constantly complaining about how much she hated her job, but not doing much to change it. A year ago, she started dating a guy named Jake, 27M, and they really hit it off. He's a decent guy, but I've always had a few concerns about him. He doesn't have a stable job either, and while I get that people have different career paths, I've always believed that being financially independent is important. Here's where things started to get complicated. Emily started spending more and more time at Jake's place. She eventually told me she wanted to move in with him and quit her job to focus on her art, something she's always wanted to pursue but never really put any effort into before. I supported her at first, thinking that maybe this time she was serious about it. She even said she was going to start selling her artwork online, and I encouraged her to go for it, but I was still skeptical about her plans. Fast forward a few months, and I've been getting increasingly concerned. She stopped paying rent at her apartment, moved in with Jake full-time, and basically stopped working altogether. Her art is not selling at all, and she's living off of Jake's inconsistent income. I've tried to bring it up a few times, and every time I'm met with defensive responses like, "It's just temporary," or "I'm figuring it out." But the thing is, it's been several months now, and nothing is really changing. I think she's just digging herself into a bigger hole. I finally had a conversation with her last week. I told her I was worried about her future and that she needed to start being more realistic. I pointed out that her art isn't bringing in money. She doesn't have a stable job, and she's completely relying on Jake financially, which is not a sustainable way to live. I also mentioned that it might be a good idea for her to either get a part-time job or start looking for something more stable while she works on her art. She got really upset. She told me that I don't understand her, that I'm just being overly practical. She accused me of always treating her like she's a failure and that I don't believe in her dreams. I told her I wasn't trying to discourage her, but I was just being realistic about how tough life can be, especially when you don't have a steady income. She said she didn't need my judgment and that I should trust her to figure it out on her own. She then proceeded to tell me that I was being controlling and unsupportive and that I was ruining our relationship by not backing her up. Now, I'm torn. I care about my sister, but I feel like she's making really poor decisions. I don't want to be the person who tells her what to do with her life, but I also don't want her to end up struggling even more than she already is. I feel like she's throwing away her financial security for the sake of an unrealistic dream, and I don't want her to end up in a bad place because of it. I'm trying to be supportive, but I don't think I can sit back and pretend like everything is okay when it's clearly not. So, AITA for not supporting my sister's decision to quit her job and move in with her boyfriend, especially when she's clearly struggling financially. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.